Welcome to this presentation of United Nations Movement. After this presentation, you should be able to explain the letter of assist, explain the main actors' responsibilities within the United Nations Standard Deployment Module, recall the strategic planning and contracting process, recall United Nations responsibilities within movement and the reimbursement for services, summarize the rotation of personnel arranged by the troop or police contributors. There are three main UN documents that contains the most important issues regarding movement. United Nations Movement Control Manual. For the troop or police contributor, the Chapter 10 is the most interesting one. It contains all we need to know regarding deployment, redeployment, and repatriation of formed units and their equipment. The guidelines for formed units from troop or police contributing countries contains general information about the operational, administrative, and logistical and financial aspects of the deployment of formed units in a United Nations field mission. These guidelines refers to the United Nations Movement Control Manual as the normative document. The Contingent on Equipment Manual contains regulations regarding phased deployment, rotation of equipment, and United Nations responsibility within movement, and what issues or services that the United Nations will reimburse to the troop or police contributor. The Contingent on Equipment Manual is adopted by the General Assembly resolution and not by the Secretariat. Both the Movement Control Manual and the guidelines of formed units from troop or police contributing countries are documents issued by the Secretariat. Letter of assist is a contractual document, legally binding between the United Nations and the troop or police contributor. It provides the authority for procurement of services on behalf of the United Nations. It is a contract where the troop or police contributor provide a service for the United Nations and where the United Nations reimburses the troop or police contributors for that specific service. When do we use a letter of assist? Every time a troop or police contributor delivers service, that is the United Nations responsibility. Example, the troop or police contributor carry out the deployment or repatriation of personnel or equipment using either its own or hired commercial capabilities. The troop or police contributor carry out deployment or repatriation of personnel or equipment using either its own resources or hired commercial capacities. The troop or police contributor carry out troop rotation using own or hired commercial capacities, or the troop or police contributor organize the packing equipment for storage of military items inside a container during the deployment. This slide tries to explain the division of responsibilities and how the different actors need to coordinate to finalize their responsibilities. The troop or police contributor are responsible for the national movement and preparation for strategic movement. Permanent mission will coordinate with the movement control section in New York on behalf of own country and the police or military forces. The national movement will be, of course, vary from country to country, all depending on the distances and the availability of transportation means. The strategic movement is normally a combination of air and sea lift. For landlocked countries, the strategic movement will start with road or rail movement before arriving the seaport of embarkation. The tactical movement, planned and executed by the mission movement control sections, is the most demanding movement. The tactical deployment, redeployment, and repatriations utilizes a mix of commercial, military, or United Nations owned transportation assets for both air, road, and rail. The control range is huge in terms of the numbers of single transports, the number of equipment, containers and vehicles in each transport, the need of load and unloading, and adequate material handling equipment. Even if the troop or police contributor often has the smallest or easiest movement responsibility, they are also the most important part of all movement planning and execution. They coordinate with both the United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Section and the Mission Movement Control Section regarding the movement of both personnel and contingent-owned equipment. They are responsible for all documentation, load lists, dangerous goods declarations, weapon lists, and passenger lists, etc. The United Nations will take care of the custom clearance, but the troop or police contributor must prepare all papers. Preparing and packing of all equipment to avoid damage during transport. We have in earlier presentations stressed the importance of correct packing. One important issue: troop or police contributors' vehicles will during the tactical movement be moved by other personnel than the vehicle-owned national drivers. We have no control over this movement. Equipment that are stored inside or on top of the vehicle will be subject to theft or loss. Finally, the troop or police contributor must be ready for the strategic movement loading on the date specified and agreed between the troop or police contributor and the United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Section. United Nations will invite the troop or police contributor to a combined recce in the mission area prior to the first deployment to a United Nations field mission. An important part of this recce is deployment issue. This slide lists the most common discussion points, but other points may also be discussed depending on how the deployment is planned. National transportation will normally be done by the troop or police contributor under letter of assist. Passengers and equipment are moved by the most suitable mode of transport to an airport or harbor where the strategic leg will start. Troop or police contributor can move everything themselves with military assets. Use of military assets will not be reimbursed by the United Nations. Troop or police contributors can commission commercial companies to provide an offer that needs to be approved by the United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Section to be reimbursed. If operational requirement, it's also possible to be reimbursed for use of airlift within the national transportation. Strategic movement is the movement of personnel and equipment from national sea or airports of embarkation to the sea and airport of debarkation in the United Nations mission area of operations. Strategic movement is planned and executed by the United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Section through commercial contractors. Some troop or police contributors prefer to conduct the strategic movement themselves. This is possible by negotiating a letter of assist with the United Nations. Tactical movement is the movement of personnel or equipment from the mission points of entry to the final destination with a United Nations mission area of operations. Mission Movement Control Section is responsible for organizing and executing intra-mission movements. The challenge is always the movement of all equipment. The United Nations mission do not have enough resources to conduct this movement alone. Mission Movement Control Section will hire local or regional commercial transport to support this movement. Everything from a small company with only one vehicle to larger companies with all types of transportation capabilities. The control and follow-up of these movements quickly becomes very demanding. Regular and direct communication between the permanent missions and United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Sections is vital to plan and execute the movement of troop or police contributors, personnel, and contingent-owned equipment. The United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Section's sequence of events can be outlined as followed. When units deployments or repatriations are decided, the Movement Control Sections initiate the first contact with the permanent mission to establish the preferred method and timeline for this movement. Movement Control Section will direct and guide the troop or police contributors in all deployments and repatriations of personnel and contingent-owned equipment. Troop or police contributors confirms the readiness dates for the contingent-owned equipment and the personnel movement. Troop or police contributors returns load lists, dangerous goods lists, passenger lists, detailed descriptions, and numbers of the different types of vehicles, contractors, weapons, etc., and the total number of length meter for all contingent-owned equipment. Troop or police contributors will confirm whether the movement will be arranged under letter of assist. If the movement is to be under letter of assist, Movement Control Section will raise a market survey to stipulate the cost of this deployment, what the United Nations would have to pay if they should conduct this deployment. This market survey price is what the United Nations will offer the troop or police contributors during the letter of assist negotiation. If United Nations arranged, a requisition for commercial service is raised. Normally, it takes 4 weeks before all proposal has arrived. If the total weight or length meter of the equipment that shall be moved changes with more than 10%, a new requisition must be raised and a new 4 weeks period starts. Movement Control Section conducts a technical operational evaluation of all received commercial proposals. Once authorized for commercial contracts, United Nations award the contract to the successful bid. Next is the period of coordination between the Movement Control Section, the troop or police contributors, and the contractor to coordinate the load of contingent-owned equipment. United Nations Headquarters Movement Control Sections may deploy a movement control specialist to assist the troop or police contributor in the preparation and loading of a contingent-owned equipment and personnel. Once all this is in place, the United Nations arranged movement will finally begin. This process is repeated for all elements of the deploying forces, advance party, the main party, etc. Since the United Nations normally organizes both the air and sea movement, it is important to understand what kind of equipment we need to send by air together with the personnel and what can be shipped by sea with the main equipment, vehicles, and containers. What do the personnel need to have access to when they arrive, and what equipment can they wait for until all the main equipment arrives? This is even more important when we talk about the advance party and the main party in initial deployment. What equipment do we need to send together with the advance party, and what may be sent together with the main party? And what equipment can be shipped with the main equipment, vehicles, or containers? As we can see in this slide, the troop or police contributor during the advance party must deploy equipment for water treatment and purification. The United Nations will, under certain conditions, accept that the troop or police contributor will be deployed in several phases. This slide describes the main reasons where phased deployment may be accepted. On deployment and repatriation, the United Nations will provide packing and crafting materials and additional containers required for transportation other than those agreed in the Memorandum of Understanding, or reimburse the cost of such material as a preventive measure against loss or damage to the equipment. Documented costs related to the loading or unloading of major equipment prior to the deployment and after repatriation will be reimbursed by the United Nations and are to be included in the letter of assist. Troop or police contributors is responsible for both rotation of own equipment and resupply own equipment, including any spare parts, minor equipment, and consumables, from the home base to the seaport or airport of debarkation in the mission area. Troop or police contributors have all different solutions how to resupply their units. Everything from regular supply and transportation by air, sea, or road to procurement locally. By coordination with the Mission Movement Control Section, the mission will be responsible for their movement within the mission area. Remember the custom clearance. Troop or police contributor need to produce all documentation. United Nations is responsible for rotation every 12 months. United Nations Headquarter Movement Control Section and the supported Mission Movement Control Section will coordinate the overall troop or police contributors rotation plan that is efficient, economical, and meet operational requirements of the mission. Rotation of personnel includes up to 100 kilo luggage per person. Many troop or police contributors demand rotation every 6 months and therefore organize and pay for this rotation themselves. It is important that the troop or police contributor coordinates regularly with the Mission Movement Control Section to plan national rotations. A national organized, conducted, and paid rotation needs always support from the Mission Movement Control Section and the United Nations transportation assets, especially the movements between the actual camp in the mission and the airport that the rotation flights uses. We have earlier learned that the United Nations only will reimburse the actual cost United Nations would have to pay to conduct a rotation. If a troop or police contributor organizes a rotation on letter of assist, it will always cost them more than what the United Nations will reimburse. Why do the troop or police contributor still want to do rotation under letter of assist? There are many good reasons for this. This slide lists some of these reasons. Over time, a troop or police contributor may actually save money by conducting rotation under letter of assist. We have in this presentation introduced you to the United Nations movement. Key takeaway: United Nations is responsible for all deployment, redeployment, and repatriation. If a troop or police contributor changes the amount of cargo with more than 10% or more, the strategic deployment will be delayed with at least 4 weeks. Troops or police contributor may conduct movements under letter of assist. Clear and mutual coordination between the United Nations Movement Control Sections and the troop or police contributor ensures a successful movement. Thank you for following this presentation.